Yeah. I was about to say welcome in, welcome back, but that's not actually my line. I stole that. And I stole that from my guest right here, the one and only John Kennedy, host of the Always Irish Notre Dame Football Podcast. John, what's good, man?
It's great to be with you, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, Bruce. I always say if you're a diehard football fan, if you could get through 4th of July, that's always my marking point. You watch them fireworks go off, and
Mhm.
and that's when you could see the camps coming towards you. And we need football, Bruce. This country's got a lot going on, a lot of
Oh,
problems,
boy.
a lot of division. Football brings us together. We need it, baby. We need it. I'm serious. Football is one of the only things that can bring everybody together. We need it.
We definitely need football, man. And we've been trying to make this happen for a while now in terms of John and I getting together and discuss some college football with you. So glad we could make this happen, John, and we're going to get right into it. But before we do that, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And finally, make sure you write it down, put it in your phone, set an alarm, do whatever you got to do to remember. Saturday nights at 7 p.m. we are live here on the Format Podcast, and we'll give you the opportunity to call in, talk to us, get at me. I love it. I can't wait.
You got the voice of an angel, Bruce. Unbelievable. Oh, my God. You need to be in every airport, every GPS, everything. Look at them magic pipes. I love it.
I appreciate that, John. Oh, man, that's funny. People tell me that all the time. It's kind of weird. I was actually thinking about doing some voiceover work. I got to figure out how to get into that. Might give me some extra money.
I'm telling you, man, like you have a voice for that. Like every time you call in my show, people are like, oh my God, Barry White on line 1. Like it's unbelievable, man. You better look into that. You're leaving dough on the table by not doing that.
Yeah, I think I might be. All right, John. Let's do this, man. So obviously you mentioned college football. It is coming, and it's funny that you mentioned how badly we need it, because I know that myself, I'm odd, and I know a lot of people think so, in that summertime is usually a tough time for me. Like most people love summer, can't wait for it. But obviously, the NFL is over. When's the Super Bowl? First week in February, second week at latest, generally. And that might end up changing because they're looking at possibly adding that 18th game. But anyway, so by mid-February, the NFL season is done. But then you still have off-season activities, draft, and all that stuff. And that's cool, but you don't have games.
Yeah.
And so then by
you're right. So when's the NBA end? June?
I was about to say
mid-June?
mid-June. Yeah, mid-June, the NBA is over. So normally I'm stuck with what am I going to do, because there's nothing really except baseball until, football time. And I am not a baseball guy at all. It's just, I find it to be a very boring sport. But you might get lucky and have an Olympic year like this year. Thank goodness for that. By the time the Olympics are over, we're almost there to football. It might be a World Cup year. That's cool too. So, you hope that you have something going on to kind of tide you over. But yeah, we're getting a lot closer. What are we? Almost through July. And so, camps are going to start up pretty heavy here. And so college football, that's your wheelhouse. We both love college football. So that's why I've got you here to talk some college football today. So one of the first things I wanted to touch on with you, and we talked about this a bit on your show. I know you're not a college football guy. I'm sorry. I know you are a college football guy, and I know you're not a video game guy. And EA Sports College Football 25 has just been released for the first time in 11 years. And a lot of people have been waiting for that game. And I mean, I did the pre-order, but I guess I didn't pre-order the right one because it didn't give me the early release. So I think tomorrow it's going to be out. So I might be up at like midnight playing the damn game and then half dead at work tomorrow. I don't know. but the reason I bring that up is because the return of the college football video game signals how much college football has changed. And it has a lot to do with NIL. And now pay for play being legalized and how much that has changed the world of college football. And that's kind of where I wanted to start with you today, John. So obviously, not only is the game fantastic, at least from what I'm seeing of the YouTube videos of actual gameplay and all that, but it it signifies the fact that most players in the game were paid $600 and given a free copy of the game to be able to utilize their name, image, and likeness, and that gets us into the new era that we're in terms of name, image, and likeness being finally realized for these players who, for so many years, have kind of, unless they're at one of those schools with the bagman, which is really a lot, but unless they're one of those programs or they're good enough to be one of those players, they were kind of toiling in uh what's the word, basically they were giving their blood, sweat, and tears and not being properly compensated for all of the money and revenue they were generating for these schools. And so whole new world, John, first, what is kind of your take? I know this has probably been beaten to death, but I don't think you and I have ever actually talked about it. Where are you on NIL, how it affects the college football world, and then of course on a lower level, how it affects Notre Dame football specifically?
Yeah, it's really really interesting. Usually big changes come kind of slow in a lot of
Mhm.
different areas in life or in sports, and we are not seeing that in college football. The landscape's changing at a rapid pace, and I am not sure. And it isn't just with NIL, but with conference expansion and things changing in the playoff format and the money involved, and everything's changing so quickly. I just think you got to get with the program.
Mhm.
You got to get with the program. And I know a lot of people are like, it maybe turns them off a little bit with the money these guys are making and pay for play and guaranteeing money
Mhm.
for young guys before they prove anything and their ego and all this stuff that goes in. But what are your options? Swim against that stream? You almost got to get with the program or give up liking this or being a part of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that's a challenge for a lot of people. In the video game part's a small kind of representative,
Yeah.
kind of a snapshot of that. I think the last time I played that game, it was the '06 version. And I
Wow.
used to play as Vince Young and just roll out in a shotgun. And if nobody was open, I'd roll them out and get 12 yards and get out of bounds and do it all over again. Like that's what I used to
Yeah.
do. I think that's the last time I played that a video game. And I have nothing against it. It's just I kind of, I don't know, grew out of it, or I'm immature and I'm doing other immature things. God bless everybody, man. All these people in their 40s, I'm playing this video game forever. Good for you, man. Whatever makes you happy. I love that. So I encourage everybody to have fun with it. Um, Here's what I think's coming, Bruce. That NCAA settlement,
Mhm.
you're going to have all these people in the Power Four conferences and Notre Dame. They're all going to start getting what I call basically a salary. When that hits, everybody's going to get a certain amount. All of these scholarship players are going to get it, and if you don't pay it, you're basically non-competitive anymore. You're not a Division I school anymore, basically in
Mhm.
football.
Right.
That's interesting. And so you're going to have all these schools paying out per scholarship just to be a part of all this and have a chance to recruit any decent player. Now, where that gets interesting, Bruce, is I hear people go, well, that's going to level the playing field, right? I don't think so, because
No.
everybody's going to get that. And then the NIL's the kicker on top of it. So
Right.
I don't see
Right.
it leveling the playing field at all. That's what the baseline's going to be. And then there's going to be money on top of it. That's how I see it going.
I think, and this is something I talked to some of my friends about. Some of them are adamantly against it, but I think to even attempt to level the playing field, one of the first things, if pay for play is now legal, which it is, I think was at House versus the NCAA
Yeah.
was the ruling. Um, you got to put some sort of salary cap in place, right? Because it's not about capping what the players can earn. It's about, if you are intending to even attempt to have any sort of fairness on the field, John State U shouldn't be able to pay quarterback X $150,000, and Bruce State U can only pay him 50, right? Now, granted, that's life. You will always have haves and have nots, but in sports, you at least attempt to level the playing field, right? So,
Hmm.
John State U, if you have, let's say, $2 million to pay your football team, and Bruce State U only has 850,000, chances are you're going to field the better, more competitive roster. Now, even if you put a cap in place, what's going to end up happening is, like we talked about, you're still going to have the bagmen, you're
Yeah.
still going to have the cheaters.
Was the next
Uh,
thing out of my mouth
yeah,
is you can set that cap all you want, and then
yeah.
that's where the old school bagman,
Hmm.
makes the difference there. Did you see Brian Kelly at the SEC Media Day? They asked him about this, and I saw the tweet this morning. He was saying he expects LSU to be able to pay out when this starts somewhere around 18 million to their roster. And
Oh
I
my
saw
goodness.
that somebody asked specifically, and he said 17 to 18 million is where he thinks their starting point's going to
Hmm.
be in the pool to be able to divide out for their players or whatever. And that's
Starting
just
points.
about right, because they were looking at like just shy of 20 million being some of these payouts.
Wow.
Um, so man, it's a new world. It's a new
It
world
is a
out
new
there.
world. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, what I'll say about this is, it's great that these young men are getting an opportunity to capitalize and literally earn off their blood, sweat, and tears and everything they put
Yeah.
out there. What I will say is, if you're being paid and you're receiving NIL, one, the other, or both, it should be mandatory that these dudes take financial literacy classes. I can't
Ah,
imagine being
yeah.
18 years old and getting handed that type of money. I would
Yep.
have no idea what to do.
Yep.
Of course,
Uh,
I'm sure the powers that be could care less whether or
yep.
not they blow the money, because they're just going to put it back
Credit,
into the
like
system. So,
credit stuff, leveraging it, like investing,
mhm,
saving, like all that sort of stuff should be
yeah,
a part of this. And I think the programs that are going to want to do this responsibly, even if it's just internal to football, they should have little conference meetings or whatever where they go over some of this stuff and
mhm,
talk about that. You're bringing up a really good point. Now, there's the plus side of these guys getting what they should get for the money they bring into the university and everybody knows football is the big money maker in college,
yeah,
whatever. I'm going to say this though. I do feel badly for middle tier and lower teams and conferences.
yep,
Bruce, some of them are not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to pay what this
yeah,
settlement is. And they literally like, they don't have the money coming in the athletic department to be able to
mhm,
even be a part of this. And therefore, they're no longer even going to be able to really be considered like a D1 football program or
mhm,
whatever. And the other issue with this that I have is if you're a coach at any of those middle tier programs, you're never going to be able to even have a dream of being competitive, because any decent players you do get, they're going to drop you and go for one and go
yep,
right where whoever will take them at the higher level and pay them that money.
mhm,
So there's going to be a lot of collateral damage for the middle tier and then lower teams. And it's going to make it the haves and the have-nots are going to be really a stark difference. And I do feel for those coaches because there's really no way to get ahead.
yeah. No, it's tough. Well, yeah, they will work there. They'll end up leaving those programs and going and being assistants and position coaches at the big schools and work their way up again. So it does suck, but it also sucks for all those players who that might be their opportunity, not necessarily to make it to the league, but to get that 4-year education, at those smaller schools and not necessarily your football factories. So yeah, there's so much to go into this, but at the end of the day, if the NCAA had handled this properly way back, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now.
Yeah. And you know where I'm coming around on this, Bruce, is like, especially with Notre Dame, that's the team I follow the closely, obviously. A lot of people don't like that. And like we're resistant to NIL at first because it's like Notre Dame, you should want to be here for the school and the degree long term, not money and all that. Like everybody needs to get over it. Like this is you either get with the damn program or you're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
going to compete anymore. You
that's
can't.
right.
There's no more half measures. We have one foot in wanting to be truly competitive, but then we're holding back on other things. I don't think that works anymore. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is going in one direction, and you really, every school and AD and athletic department really has to decide, are you in or are you out? Because there's really no way to half step this thing anymore with the way the trains left the station one way
Mm-hmm.
towards Moneyville. You got to kind of be in or out. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And I think you're going to see the programs that get in on this early and have structure and know what they're doing. They're going to be at a little bit of an advantage.
Yep. No, that makes a whole lot of sense. And it's just, in a way, it's an exciting new world of college football. Is also a scary new world of college football. So,
It is. Yeah. Bruce, there's going to be some downside to some of this. You know, the new playoff, you got a million teams. It's going to be, but whatever, the money. There's going to be really good, exciting parts of this. But when you make decisions that are this drastic, this quick, and
mhm,
change things as much as college football has in a bunch of different areas, there's bound to be some downside that we just don't know what it is yet.
right.
And we're going to wait and find out. But when you change as many big things as they have, as drastically as they have, there's bound to be some consequences here on the downside that we don't have the data yet to know what they are.
Mhm,
But when the plus side is dollars, it's worth the risk for all the people that have a big stake in it, because it's more money no matter what.
right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's go to one of the other major changes in the game, not just the NIL and the pay for play, but the conference realignment, which has totally
Yeah.
shaken things up and changed a lot. The
Yeah.
Pac-12 as we know it no longer exists. I guess for this year only you have what, the Pac-2 left. And that's Oregon State and Washington State. And you have in a way, I'm kind of happy to see what the Big Ten has done, because they didn't let the SEC just completely run away with everything. The
Yeah.
SEC has already, you know, for better or for worse, kind of established themselves as the dominant conference in terms of winning championships. Now, I'm not going to get into all my theories about how they had some help along the way, but when it comes to being on the field, they're out here winning championships. I want to say in the last was it the last 15 years they've had 5 different programs in the conference win championships. Like, that's pretty serious. And obviously, you know, John, I live in SEC country, I live in Florida. It really does just mean more here, and it's
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. But with all that said, the moves they made, obviously bringing in what is this, Oklahoma and Texas, those were huge. Those were two blue blood programs. They came in from the old Big 12, and so they're doing their thing now. I'm surprised they didn't try to grab up UCF. That would have been big, because you would have been keeping a lot of the high level recruits from the state of Florida, you know, in this region. But so be it. But yeah, so you've got the SEC doing their thing, but what I loved is the Big 12, they responded, and they pulled in, what's that? Washington, Oregon, what's this? Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. So that improves them on the basketball court. That also, of course, improves them on the gridiron. And so the Big Ten, I believe, can compete. They can stand up and compete with the SEC. So this should be interesting. The only thing I don't like is, along with the conference realignment comes playoff expansion, which again, I was cool with that also. But what really bothers me, of course, is now you have the two big boy conferences basically saying to the college football playoff, like, listen, we need a certain number of berths. And I'm like, well, what is the point there? You know, again, I am a proponent of, let's do it as close as we can to on the field, and try to keep it as close as possible to actually being merit based and, you know, proving a champion that way. But at the end of the day, there's just way too much money involved. So your thoughts on conference realignment and college football playoff expansion, and then we'll kind of get into some more stuff.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, here's what I'm going to miss. And this is a guilty and always Irish guilty pleasure here. Here's what I'm going to miss, Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
My whole life, there is nothing more fulfilling to me on a Saturday evening than Notre Dame winning whenever their game is, and me drinking beers at about 1:45 a.m. watching that late night Pac-12 game.
I
It's
don't know
the
how you do
only
it.
game. Oh, I loved it. And you had what's his name? Papadocious, Braggadocious,
Oh, he's
whatever
hilarious.
his name
Yes.
is the
Yeah, yeah,
announcer
yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
It was just the most innocent, guilty pleasure I ever had is Notre Dame wins. I could drink my couple beers, watch that last late night game, that USC game at like 1:30 a.m. there because they're so far behind on the West Coast there with the time difference.
Right.
So I'm gonna miss that. It's just, man, like, am I an old guy for like kind of liking the days where like the geographics actually tied to the conference you were in and there was like a style of play to each region and you kind of had Bruce, you kind of had a feel like this is what it feels like here or there. Maybe some people like that that's gone and now it's all mixed up. But here's what I think you're looking at. The Big Ten, there's a lot of egos there with the power players in the Big Ten, the power brokers. They started to see what the SEC was trying to do and build. And all those power players in the Big Ten said, we can't let them run away with this. And then it's just them. So then they beefed up and did a pretty good job. So I think maybe you agree. I mean, it's the big two right now. I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are the big two power players. It's funny to call them the Big 10, the Big 20, the big whatever they are. Those are your power players. Here's what I think is interesting. These conferences, you're used to like teams relatively kind of fitting in a slot in the pecking order of these conferences, the Big 10 and the SEC. Pretty stable over the last handful of years or whatever. I got news for a lot of these teams, man. Things are going to get mixed up here. You're doing away with those divisions. It's more of a round robin thing, so you can't benefit from being in a weaker side of the division or whatever. That's going to be a big difference. You're going to have a lot of interesting shakeups in both these conferences in terms of the pecking order. And it's going to be really interesting to see. Like, Bruce, think about, we're Notre Dame guys. Think about USC in a Big Ten schedule. Like, that is the most intriguing thing to think about weather-wise, travel-wise.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind, the weather.
It's so intriguing. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how long it's going to take, as you mentioned, weather, for USC to be able to get to a point where they are going to be able to compete when they have to go to the shoe or they have to go to Ann Arbor or, Madison, Wisconsin in freaking November and it's, 2 degrees out there and dumping snow. Like, they're not going to be able to manipulate that the way they do with us, right? Because what is it, when they play Notre Dame, when they play at Notre Dame, they play in October. When they're playing at home, they make sure they play it at the end of the year. And I'm like,
I've always complained about that second week of October's when we get them at home, and that weather's usually hasn't turned yet, and it's usually pretty decent.
It's perfect, yeah.
Yeah, and then when we go out there, it ruins the Kennedy Thanksgiving dinner the week before because we're all worried about the game, arguing and mad about USC before the game even happens. So it's going to be a big adjustment for them. And then the other one is, you got that over there. And then also, we've talked about this before. If there's ever a scenario where that ACC falls apart, which looks like it might be realistic, how does that USC and the Big Ten, how does that look where Notre Dame's got to make their next move? And they're already always been connected with the Big Ten. And then you put their biggest rival in the Big Ten. Baby, I mean, you might be looking at it.
Yeah, it's I can't imagine that they would at that point be left just hanging out, still doing their own thing, because what's going to happen is the Big Ten would know that they have that too, but they would also know they have the leverage, because what they would tell Notre Dame is we're not going to allow your Olympic sports into our conference if you don't come in football. And so I think that would happen, and at that point Notre Dame would finally have to acquiesce and give up their independence.
Yeah. And you know what? Listen, I want Notre Dame to be independent as long as it's competitively viable. It's got to be competitively viable. And you might be able to fill out a schedule doing it on your own or whatever, but if you're making $40 million less than Rutgers or whatever, then that's not sustainable when you compound that over years. So they may have
Mhm.
some big decisions to be made there. So that Big Ten thing, there's going to be some shakeups in there. Let me ask you this. Where do you think Texas and Oklahoma are going to slot into the SEC? That is so interesting to me because of the different ways that the Big 12 plays and the SEC. Where are
Mhm.
they going to slot in? How's that going to look to you?
I don't think Texas is going to have too much difficulty. Steve Sarkisian, since he took that job, what's that, 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
He has been recruiting and building
Yep.
specifically knowing that he's going into the SEC. Because remember, if I'm not mistaken, he was Nick Saban's OC at Alabama. I can't remember if they won a title or not, but so he's well familiar with the SEC. He knows what type of bodies it takes. He knows what type of players, etc. So he's
Yeah.
been building towards making that move. Brent Venables, that's going to be a little more interesting. Obviously, he spent a lot of time with Dabo Swinney at Clemson, but while he was at Clemson, he built the type of rosters in the trenches, at least defensively. And so he kind of knows what that's going to take as well to be able to match up with the SEC type athletes, right? Because even though they were ACC, they had to play Florida State and Miami. So you got those kind of guys. You know that if you're Clemson, when you get to the playoffs, you're likely going to face an Ohio State. You're going to face an Alabama. You may face a Georgia. Obviously, I think they played Notre Dame in the playoffs twice. Not saying that Notre Dame is on that level, but in terms of bodies in the trenches, Brent Venables also knows how to build it. Now, I
I
believe
do feel like
Oklahoma's got a difficult.
Texas. I do feel like right away Texas
Mhm.
is a little better positioned with their roster and a little more stable entering. Like I do. I got to tell you, Bruce, I was genuinely impressed with Texas's physicality in that roster when they
Yeah,
played Alabama
yeah,
last year.
yep.
I underestimated
I
where
like it.
Texas's roster were. Those were dudes out there, and
Yeah,
I was genuinely impressed by what I saw.
right. Absolutely. I'm looking at Oklahoma's 2024 schedule this year, and so they play Temple, Tulane, Texas, uh, Ole Miss. That's going to be so.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Texas matchup is going to be tough. Uh, then you got Ole Miss right behind that. Then you got Missouri, another good team right behind that, followed
Yeah.
by LSU. They got a
Ooh.
nasty run. Then they play Houston,
Ooh.
right?
Ooh.
Then Tennessee, South Carolina, Maine, and you finish with Alabama. So Oklahoma is they don't have an easy run at
Yeah.
all
Hey,
going into the SEC.
welcome to your new home. Take a bite
Right,
of this.
right. Now I do think that Brent Venables has I believe he's done a lot to try and solidify that schedule. He's an outstanding defensive coach. This is it Jackson Dart? Is that his name? No, I think Dart's at Ole Miss. But the point is, they have a quarterback that they're really, really high on, and that I've heard spoken very well of by Joel Klatt and the rest of these guys. So obviously, the most important position seems to be kind of squared away. So I don't know. I think that schedule is a nightmare. I don't know how they're going to be able to navigate it. Maybe they get out there with 4 losses, but it's tough. And looking at the Texas schedule, as you brought it up, it's Colorado State, UTSA, win-win. Mississippi State, another win.
Oh, I know the
Georgia.
one I got circled. You'll know when you get to it. There's one of these I got circled, and you'll know it
Oh,
when you
okay.
get
I'm sorry.
to
I
it,
didn't go in
Bruce.
order. So it's Colorado State at Michigan.
Woo!
You know what? That's going to be a fantastic game. It
It
really
is.
is. It's going to be a great game.
And just
And
listen, you know how I feel about Michigan, but
I know.
those brands, the
Yeah.
Longhorn and Michigan, like
Yeah.
that is like if you're a college football fan, oh my God, you gotta
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. And John,
And Bruce,
yeah,
not in like a neutral bowl side environment, corporate feel, but on a campus. Like that's
right,
what I like
right.
about it. You're getting the real deal feel,
That's
baby.
true. You're getting that in the big house. That's right.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
yeah. Let's see. So it gets tough. Probably their tough streak is Oklahoma, Georgia. They get a break with Vandy. Then they play Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and A&M. Actually, Texas got the better of the scheduling
Yeah,
than,
yeah.
than OU did. So obviously the big ones are Michigan, Georgia, Oklahoma, and that's about it. They have a very manageable schedule. So I fully expect to see them back in the playoff this year, the college football playoff 12 team. So real quick before we move on, they play at Michigan, and I know this is blasphemy as an Irish fan. I'm rooting for Michigan, John. You know what it is with me. I am rooting for Michigan because I cannot, in good conscience, ever root for an SEC school. I can't. I can't. Let me tell you how bad it is with me, John. I want to say the opener for USC is in Las Vegas against LSU. I'm rooting for USC. I I, I cannot
Well,
ever root for
I'm
an
rooting.
SEC
Wait, wait,
school. I
wait.
can't
I'm
do it.
rooting for USC too because
Oh,
it
that's
can
crazy.
only think about it. It can only help Notre Dame.
That's
Think
true.
think about it in every
That's true.
practical
That's
and
right.
emotional way. I'm rooting for USC because I
Mhm.
want Kelly to lose right away. I want all the
Right.
LSU people upset. And
And you want
also it'll
USC as
pump
good as they can be when we beat them at the
exactly
end of the year.
because I think USC's they're gonna have multiple losses. I'd be shocked if they don't by the time we get they you want to talk about tough schedules in your new conference. I think USC's got a rough road in that Big Ten year one, too.
Did you look at theirs already?
I
I'm
did, and
I'm grabbing it
man,
right
I'm
now.
telling you, I think it's a
Uh
pretty tough schedule. And you know what else? Michigan's got a real tough schedule. For
oh,
as lucky as they got last year, Michigan's got a tough schedule this year.
yeah. I'm looking USC, they open up versus LSU. They
Yep.
play at Michigan, they play Wisconsin, at Minnesota. They got Penn State. Oh man, at Washington,
Ooh.
Nebraska, and then they host Notre Dame. Yeah, they got some tough ones in there. That's right.
I'm telling you, Michigan's got a rough road. It's a good thing for them. They did what they did last year. Maybe they'll
Yeah.
hang in there, but they got a rough road. They got a tough schedule. They're making up for the
Mhm.
ease of last year's.
Yeah. No, they definitely caught some breaks in the scheduling last year. I know that Michigan plays at Oregon this year, I believe. That's gonna be
Yeah, they caught some breaks. They played one good team all year. I'd say that's a hell of a break, Bruce. You played Ohio State. That's the only team I respect on that whole schedule. And don't tell me Penn State. They never. If it's a big game, Penn State's losing. Just chalk it in. They're going to win 10 games every year against 10 teams they have a better roster than, and then lose to the 2 they have less talent than every single year. So I don't even count Penn State. Michigan played
oh
one
my
game all
gosh.
year and they won it. Good job, guys.
Well, hey, but
And
look,
I'm not
I
even
mean,
counting the conference championship game. You played a team that doesn't even understand what offensive football is, and you called it your conference championship. I don't respect that.
they're gonna be better this year. Don't worry about that. Iowa, that is. But no, I hear you. I hear you. And
That Iowa, man, that defense is so good. If you
uh
just had any semblance of an offense, they
yeah,
would be a
yeah,
really intriguing ball club.
they would. They would. But they got forced to get rid of was it Kirk Ferentz,
Hey,
Brian Ferentz?
What
They
if,
got
what
forced.
about Nebraska, Bruce? Do you think this
Mhm.
is a year they actually break out and like put it all together? It's a really interesting, like all the heartbreaking losses by like 3 points or less. Could this be a year where Nebraska turns a corner?
They definitely will turn a corner. And the reason I say that is because obviously he's not Nick Saban, but Matt Rule is a very good program builder in college football. We watched him do it. We
Yeah.
watched him turn Temple into one of the best defensive teams in the country and be very solid. Then we watched him go down to Baylor and do his thing there and rebuild that coming out of the Art Briles craziness. And now he's got an opportunity to do it again at Nebraska. And I do believe that he's going to do that. Let's see. Nebraska's got UTEP, Colorado, Northern Iowa, Illinois. So far, manageable first 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Purdue in week 5, manageable again. Rutgers, manageable again. They could end up 6-0 to start the season, right?
Man.
Indiana could be 7-0. Then they run into Ohio State. That's the one. Obviously, Ohio State is loaded for bear. Ryan Day clearly fears for his job. UCLA, that's an
Bruce, is
intriguing
that
matchup.
fair? Is that
What's that?
fair? I feel
Right.
like Ryan Day is in a very, very weird spot where like
Yeah.
11-1 is a failure. Like you could almost be so consistent on the high end. I feel like if they don't go undefeated, they're going to want to fire the guy. And it's like, you better be careful what you ask for if you go
Yeah, no, I
down
get
that
it.
path. Perfection. Like with that roster, they are
That's
expecting
right.
to go undefeated, but
Exactly.
like not even close, undefeated.
And don't let them lose to Michigan again. If they lose to Michigan again, he's gone. It doesn't matter what else they do.
Wow.
I shouldn't say that unless they pull out a championship. But
Do,
if
do,
they
but
get beat
do,
by
do you
Michigan,
think he would be gone because they tell him to leave, or gone because he gets sick of being like, I lose one game a year and you want to run me out of here? To hell with you people.
no,
Which way?
they tell him to leave because it's not I lose one game a year. It could be
Yeah.
any other game but that one. It can't be the game, right? It can't be.
You better be
You know,
careful what you ask for. You better know who
listen,
you're getting, and you better know they're better, because you could go from that one loss to about 2 or 3 or 4 if you hired the wrong guy out. And
that's true.
it's
But
just very, when you're at that level where one loss is considered a nightmare, even if it's to that team. That's a very tricky situation.
it's Ohio State, John. You got the pick of the litter of any outstanding coach if that job comes open. It's Ohio
That's
State.
true. Yeah,
That's not just, that's not Bruce Hope State University. It's not. You
that's
are
true.
gonna get,
That's true.
yeah,
Oh, come on,
absolutely.
give your school a little more credit. But
I
yeah,
hear you.
but that's a very, very interesting thing. But they are expecting perfection, and if they're not like in the title game, I think the year's going to
Mhm.
be considered a failure.
Can you imagine how much money they spent this past year to really load up? I mean, because again, they got to beat Michigan, and then
Yep.
now to win the championship, it's if you don't get the bye, it's what 4 games to win the
Yep.
championship.
Yes, it is.
So this is not 2 games anymore. This is like we talked about at the beginning. This is a whole new world in terms of trying to win a championship.
Yep.
So they have given Ryan Day everything possible that he could need, and if he doesn't get it done, and they got an expensive OC in Chip Kelly,
Yeah.
who's a former head coach. Like there is nothing that Ohio State at this point does not have in terms of attempting to be successful. So they
Bruce,
just have to go out and
Bruce,
do it.
I was looking up some blue chip recruiting numbers. I was
Okay.
breaking down Notre Dame's kind of recruiting and where they're at now and where they
Mhm.
were. And the way they usually calculate that is like a 4-year rolling average is how they calculate that blue chip ratio. And the
Mhm.
blue chip guys are 4 and 5-star guys, in your recruiting class. Ohio State's number one in that category at 90% blue chip rate. Number one in the country, above Georgia, above
Mhm.
Alabama, whatever.
They're loaded. They're loaded.
90% blue chip rate. That is absolutely unbelievably terrific recruiting.
Mhm. Just have to finish the job now because
90.
like we're saying, and so everything you're saying is falling right in line with what I'm saying. There's nothing Ryan Day needs that he does not have. So if he
Yeah,
can't get the job done, then we know what time it is. He has to go. Who
man.
they're going to replace him with, don't know, but he has to go at that point.
Man,
Real
that's going
quick,
to
back
be
to your
interesting.
Nebraska point. I'm looking
Yeah.
at this schedule. They could win 8 or 9 games here. They have a very manageable schedule. They don't play Penn State. They don't play Michigan. To your point, if USC is not that good, they could beat them.
Mm.
We don't know what Wisconsin's going to be yet. I don't know for the life of me why Luke Fickle went there and tried to change their entire offensive philosophy and hire a freaking air raid OC. I have I think it's Philip Longo. I have no idea why he did that. Like Nebraska does what Nebraska does. They pound the rock and they bully ball and they punish you. All you need to do is open up the offense a bit, much like I hear you lamenting consistently with Notre Dame, right? Bring it into the 21st century. Let's get a modern college football offense, but don't stray so far from the DNA that has made Nebraska successful for all these years, and you completely try to change it. I think that was just dumb. But yeah, Nebraska totally. I'm sorry, I was referencing Nebraska. I meant
Uh,
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Yeah. Yeah.
Wisconsin in terms of their DNA
Yeah.
offensively.
Yeah, and then you know what? Two team. We referenced it. Week one, right out of the gate, USC LSU.
Mhm.
Here's what's so interesting
Oh,
about that. I mean, obviously, for a Notre Dame guy, I'm intimately connected to both these programs with Notre
yeah.
Dame, USC, and Brian Kelly at LSU. So there's
Mhm.
intrigue across the board. But really think about it. You had two of those teams that had really dynamic offenses and great quarterbacks last year, but
Mhm.
two of the literal worst defenses you could ever possibly have in the whole world.
Right.
And they both totally tore down and are rebuilding those defenses. I cannot wait to see what that looks like with
Mhm.
their new quarterbacks that they both got in, how those offenses can continue to roll,
Mhm.
but who could get their defense back on track? Because I know they got talent going into
Mhm.
both of those programs. Talent ain't a problem at USC. Shouldn't it never it is at LSU. I want to see who gets their defense back on track the quickest out of those two.
Great point. And real quick, before we move on to our final topic of this discussion, what do you think of this business of it being exposed that Lincoln Riley's been trying to get out of this LSU game for like 2 years? That really pissed me off because
Yeah.
when Lincoln Riley was at OU and they found out OU was moving into the SEC, and then he
Yup.
decided to take the USC job instead of the
Ah,
LSU job, I had to hear all
ah,
the stuff from all the college football pundits that he was ducking the smoke and he was afraid of the SEC, but they weren't keeping it simple. USC freaking bought both of his homes in Oklahoma. They gave him a new house in LA, right? They bought both of his homes in Oklahoma, gave him a new house in LA, gave him unlimited use, him and his family, unlimited use of the private jet, and made him to that point the highest paid coach in college football. Like, what's there to argue about? You're going to be filthy rich and live in LA, or no disrespect, you're going to be filthy rich and live in Louisiana. Nah, I don't think there's any freaking question there. But you have all the SEC sycophants and bootlickers. Oh, he was ducking the smoke. He was afraid. He didn't want it. But now, and I was one of the main dudes defending Lincoln Riley, saying that that's not the case, right? But now we find out that Lincoln Riley has been trying to get out of
yeah.
this game for 2 years. Like,
It's
what are your
Bruce.
thoughts on that, John?
Oh, it's so interesting. Like, listen. Me and Brian Kelly do not get along. We have a bad
Mhm,
relationship. He did not
mhm.
like me. I did not like him. Okay.
Wait, he knew
But
who you were?
oh, come on, man. Brian Kelly got that burner account on Twitter going after me. And then one day he forgot to log out and everybody knew it was him. He's got a burner account.
Really?
Either him or one of his people was going at me and they forgot to log out one day and they figured out who it was and it was
That's
him. It
that's
was on the
crazy.
McAfee show. Pat McAfee brought it up on his show.
Really?
And they go, "This is Kelly's burner," and he was coming at me, and everything that burner said has come true. It was about Swarbrick
Wow.
retiring, the president retiring. It all
Mhm.
did come true. But anyways,
Wow.
I got
Okay.
to give Brian Kelly credit. Here's what happened, Bruce. Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly share an agent. Okay, they
Yes, I knew
share
that.
an agent. And Lincoln Riley went to the agent and said, "You need to go to Brian Kelly and tell him we can't have this game and come up with some
Mhm.
excuse. We need to redo this, visit it
Mhm.
down the road or whatever. Do
Right.
me a solid and go to Kelly and tell him." So the
Mhm.
guy does, and Kelly goes, "To hell with that. We're playing this game."
Right,
I got to
right,
give
right.
Kelly credit, man. I got to, like,
Yeah.
he's got an ego on him, and I respect
He
it in
does.
this regard. I do. So Kelly's the one saying, "Nope, we're playing this damn game." And I give him a lot of credit. And I can't
Mhm.
wait to watch that game as long as we went ours the day before.
Yeah, I hear you on that.
Otherwise, I'm not going to be in the mood.
I hear you on that. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. All
So
right,
that is
let's
a
get to
wild story. And I give Kelly full credit for holding to his
Mhm.
guns on that one.
All right, there you go. So let's get to the final part of this college football discussion before I let you go for today, John. And this is something that intrigues me. Obviously, as Notre Dame football fans, I know what we are looking towards. I want to talk to you about the college football games this year. You're looking most forward to watching. Now, obviously, we know we're looking forward to that opener and Notre Dame at Texas A&M. We know we're looking forward to the finish, Notre Dame at USC, and we're also looking forward to that big one in November, Florida State at Notre Dame. I get
Yeah.
it. And for the Always Irish tailgate, I'm looking forward to Miami of Ohio at Notre Dame. That's going to be freaking awesome. I can't wait. But in terms of non-Notre Dame games that you're looking forward to seeing, have you had a chance to look at some of these schedules and take a look at some of the games that I know we talked about LSU versus USC. So besides that, what other games are really standing
Yeah.
out to you?
So here's one thing I find tricky, especially
Mhm,
in the summer, you're looking ahead and you're looking at what could be, and you're looking at a lot of these schedules. What one thing I always want people to realize is all these all these games and when they're scheduled are not equal. And what I mean by that is when you got games in late November, they look juicy on the schedule, but
mhm,
you don't know what's going to be on the line by the time we get to that point. And I always keep that in mind when I look at my excitement level, like Notre Dame USC last game of the year. If USC's got 4 or 5 losses, which I think might be realistic, that changes the feel of that game compared to what it looks like on paper now. That being said, how about this one, Bruce? This is going under the radar. How about Georgia Clemson week 1?
Uh, so the reason that didn't really stand out to me is Clemson still has talent, but I think it's over for them as being a consistent national championship
So you
contender.
think they're on the little down
I
kind of
do. I
Dabo's
do.
on the downhill slide of
Mhm.
this?
Because over the last few years, they've lost a bunch of quality coordinators.
Yeah.
Dabo still is adamant that he's not going to be doing the transfer portal piece. He's made it clear that he's very much against NIL. And so if he's against NIL, he's definitely going to be against pay for play. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know what Dabo thinks he's going to do. I mean, well, he's got plenty of money, so he could retire and never coach another game in his life and be good. But I don't know what he thinks he's going to do in terms of still being effective and being outstanding and being a championship contender there at Clemson. I can't see it. So I think Georgia is likely going to smack him around.
Oh, baby. So that one's on my radar early in the year too.
Hmm.
And then you know what else too? In the SEC,
Hmm.
um, I don't know why, but I got to give Lane Kiffin credit, Bruce. He
He's a
used to
really
be
good coach. He's a
he
weird
used
guy, but he's a really good coach.
that's what I'm hinting at. He used
Hmm.
to be a guy that I just thought was a nepotism. Got it, and actually, rest in peace to his dad, who just passed away a
Yeah, I
couple
saw
days
that.
ago, Monty. Um, I thought this is a guy who's only getting these opportunities because of who his dad is and all that leverage and the Tennessee to USC thing and all that. And I
Hmm.
didn't like the way he carried himself at all and everything with it. He has turned that around. And I admit he is one of my favorite personalities in college football right now. He's a troll on Twitter.
He
He
really
doesn't
is.
seem to take himself too seriously.
Right.
And they play an exciting brand of offensive football that I really like. I'm
Right.
looking at like LSU Ole Miss. That really intrigues me. That's juicy to me with the Kelly and then the Lane Kiffin stuff. I'm really looking forward to that.
Hmm.
And again, I know you mentioned it, but Texas, Michigan,
That is
that
huge.
jump, dude, that is like
That's
right at
yeah, it's
top of my
gigantic.
list.
Yeah.
It's, and then you got, let's be honest, I never had much use to watch all of LSU football, but with Kelly there, every week is must watch just because of the intrigue factor. And I
Mhm.
want to see LSU Kelly year 3 at LSU against Alabama and DeBoer in his first go around at Alabama.
Mhm.
I'm looking
Mhm.
at that. What do you make of the Alabama situation? Are you expecting a drop off, a big one, a little one, not a drop off? Keep it moving. What do you think that's going to be like?
So it's so tough to follow a living legend like Nick Saban. It really is.
It is.
That said, Kalen DeBoer, I think I heard the other day, I believe was it this week? I believe Joel Klatt interviewed him on Monday, either this week or last week. But I think his record is like 112 or 115-12 as a head coach or something like that. Kalen DeBoer is an outstanding head coach. Now that said, I'm curious to see how much it's going to affect him having lost is it Ryan Grubb, his OC, who's now the OC for the Seahawks. So I wonder how much that's going to affect him. But you're still going to have a ton of talent at Alabama. Some guys left, but you're still going to have a ton of talent. And this is not like he's a guy just getting his opportunity. He's a guy who was in the national championship game last year. So I think that he is going to continue to develop Jalen Milroe, and I think that's going to be good. And I think that Alabama is going to be just fine. Now, that said, just fine is a relative term, right? It's
Mm,
not going to be just fine for all those wackos in Tuscaloosa who are expecting a championship every year. And
yeah.
it's going to be very, very tough being the guy that follows the guy, right? You would much rather be the guy that follows the guy that follows the guy. But
It's the next
I
thing I was gonna say is that's where
yeah.
you want to be. You want to be the guy
Mhm.
that follows the guy and slide in there. Then, hey, what about Georgia, man? Do they just have so much talent that they're like not even talked about anymore because everybody
Yeah,
knows they have a lot of talent? Or like I
correct.
have not heard that much chatter about them, but I know they're loaded. I know that
Well,
roster's juiced.
I also think the reason you don't hear a lot about them is because they keep getting in trouble with these drag racing incidents and the
Dude,
DUIs and all that. So
come
I
on,
think
man.
at this point, Kirby Smart is like, let's just stay quiet and stay under the radar. And the only talking we want done about us is when we're out here putting people in body bags, right?
Yeah.
Quick side note with Georgia, did I ever tell you that Carson Beck, their starting quarterback, went to high school with my daughter?
I did not know that. Is he a
Yeah, like
nice kid? Nice kid or what?
I never met him. I know that he was Mr. Florida, Mr. Football in the state of Florida, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he took the school to a state championship. I never met him, but yeah, he went to Mandarin High School right down the road from my house.
Man, that's
Yeah, they graduated in the same class. Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. So I don't know, man. It's here's kind of my big picture thing for college football this year is
Mhm.
everybody's always excited about a new college football year.
Yeah.
This is the grand experiment, Bruce. Like you have it's the
Mhm.
first go around with these new big changes in the conferences. It's the first go around with the expanded playoff format. This is the grand
Yeah,
experiment. It's the
it
first
is.
chance we're going to have to fill in any data points on all these changes.
Mhm.
And there's always already intrigue. This is just going to be really interesting to watch. Really.
Mhm. It really is. You know what we forgot? Oregon at Michigan, November 2nd.
I can't believe we forgot that. That's going to be a good one too.
That's gonna
Is
be a
it now?
really
Wait,
good one.
wait. Where? Who's home? Who's going where?
Michigan's home. This is Oregon at Michigan.
Man, I feel like every damn game big game they have is at home. I feel like they have like 8 or 9 home games every year. Get out of that stupid place. I wanted the Oregon's a tough place to play. Go out there. Come on.
Oh man. Well, see, I think they're going to Michigan because they got Ohio State at home earlier in the year.
Yeah.
They weren't going to give Oregon, Ohio State, and Michigan at home. Like that. That would
Yeah.
be,
Yeah, but
yeah,
man, yeah, that's going to be a good one too. And
it
Michigan,
really is.
it's you lost Harbaugh. There's still a lot of talent there. It'll be really interesting to see where they're at this year. I feel like they're getting kind of written off, and I don't know if they're going to get hit hard on sanctions or a slap on the wrist for
Mhm.
anything that happened. But I wouldn't overlook them either. I mean, I don't like them, and I don't
Mhm.
like their media or their fans at all.
Right.
But I gotta say, they may be it'd be a mistake to overlook them.
You know what's my take on that, John, is that had Harbaugh stayed, I think the sanctions would have come down hard on Michigan.
Yep.
That's what I
I
think. But I think
Yep.
the fact that he's gone, they're like, okay, we
Yep.
can let this be because
And
also
yeah, and
it
then the
was good for
story
college
starts
football
to
to
go
see.
away. The
Yeah.
months go by, people move on. You're
Mhm.
not getting that heat, and it isn't in the
Right.
news.
Yeah,
And
you
then
don't have to
everybody
look at him
backs
and see
off.
him and
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
thinks about it. And I
Yep.
think it's also the other part is, and you may not want to admit this, but Michigan winning a national championship for the first time in forever, arguably the only bigger thing could be Notre Dame winning a national championship for the first time in forever.
Yeah,
As
that
you
might be
mentioned,
right.
these are two blue blood programs. So Michigan winning a title was great for the sport. Yeah, it came with some controversy, but it was great for college football.
Yeah.
Now Notre Dame just needs to be the one to go ahead
Oh, yeah,
and
it
get
wasn't
off
great
their
for me.
slide.
It wasn't great for me personally, but
Mhm,
for the
mhm.
landscape of college football,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's what I'm yeah.
It was literally the worst case outcome for me personally. But
Mhm.
big picture, I totally understand. You know what it's like, Bruce? It's like when the Cubs won the World Series in 16. I'm a White Sox fan.
Uh-oh.
Seeing the Cubs win it in 16 was the worst
Mhm.
case outcome for me, but it was great for the sport of baseball and history.
Right,
Totally
exactly.
agree.
Was it
Yeah.
over 100 years before that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. So, when you see droughts like that get broken, with blue blood programs and franchises, it's always good for the sport in
All
general.
right,
So, yeah,
Notre Dame, you're on
let's
the
keep that
clock. Let's go.
there you
88.
go.
Johnny boy's getting old here. Let's go. Come on now.
There you go. Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, I guess that's all we got here, John. It's been great as always. Thanks so much for joining me to talk some college football. Before you get out of here, man, where can the people find you?
Certainly. It's always good to be with you. Maybe when we get into camp a little bit, maybe we'll rejoin and talk Notre Dame specifically when we get
Yeah,
into camp or we start to
love that.
feel out what that's going to look like.
Mhm.
YouTube, always Irish. Twitter, always Irish. You can find me there. Audio only anywhere you want it. Type it in. You can find me there. Um, and yeah, so everything I do, you can find there. And I go live often. You can find me. Just type in always Irish. You'll see me yelling on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, possibly stroking out. We don't want that.
Yeah, not yet. Too early for that.
Well, we'll see what happens. But John, thanks again, man. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Always love talking college football with you. This is an extended version of when I call into your show and we talk.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I do want you to look into those speaking opportunities, man. You got the voice of an angel. I'm telling you, brother, you got to get some deals, some commercial reads or something.
Yeah, I'll look into it, man. Thanks, John. All right, everybody. Appreciate you tuning into this one. Remember, we have live shows every Saturday night at 7 p.m. And when you go ahead, like and subscribe to the channel, make sure you turn your notifications on because we go live a lot of other times as well. And, you don't want to miss any of it. But for now, I'll see you next time and we're out. Peace.
Have a good one.